Hello and welcome to Speaking Spirit, where we talk about all things spiritual. Your host, John Moore, is a shamanic practitioner and spiritual teacher. And now, here's John.
Hey everybody. I have a very, I hope exciting, definitely exciting for me, podcast episode this morning. Well, I'm recording it in the morning. You may be listening whatever time it is where you are. Today I have my first guest. This is something I've been promising for a while, so you don't just have to listen to the sound of my voice. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my dear friend, Jessica Verrill. And I'll tell you a little bit about Jessica, and then we're going to talk about something I think is of interest to everyone today. So Jessica Verrill is the founder and CEO of Blue Indigo Publishing Services. She provides soul-led leaders a global platform to showcase their skills through the process of becoming best-selling authors. Her skills as an intuitive coach and energetic alchemist support high levels of growth and alignment with the intention of attracting high-end clients and opportunities. Jessica resides in Maine with her husband and daughter, where she loves connecting with nature, gardening, and being of service. And amen to all of that. And I am so happy to have another Mainer on here as well. Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
I'm well, John. Thank you.
Excellent. And we're definitely going to talk a bit about the projects. I know you have a lot going on. I don't even know everything that you have going on, so I'm excited to hear about that. But today we decided that we were going to talk about poverty mindset and poverty consciousness. And why don't you tell us all? I'm sure I will learn a tremendous amount about that, and why is that an important topic to you?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah.
I'm excited to be here and your first guest. Woo.
Yeah.
So poverty mindset is something that I've experienced myself and come up a lot with my clients, and now with the publishing aspect of my business. It's something that I'm noticing coming up a lot. And I think a lot of times people in this spiritual community or in the helping professions don't even realize that it's something that they have or that they're even aware of.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I sit here and I think about it, and, I think that there's always levels to everything. Like there's always a next level that you can grow into. But looking back on how far I've come and how far I've come through shifting my mindset around this, and how much it's changed my life is something that I've been really passionate about, wanting to kind of talk a little bit more about and dispel some of the myths.
Yeah, I think it's such an important topic. I'm sure I had a similar experience and upbringing where, I grew up, in not such great circumstances. And it sort of creates this, this sense of undeservingness, I think, for lack of a better term. Do you think that that's a big part of it? Do you think like upbringing and how that affects you, later in life? Obviously, I just turned 49. I'm, pushing half a century, and I find my upbringing still having an effect on my life and, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. Of course, our most formidable years are up until we're 7 years old. So, of course, that's going to have such a massive impact on our lives. I think there's such a strong past life component as well. And definitely a lot of like societal like energetic agreements that we need to work through when we're on the spiritual path and actually promoting ourselves as such,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that somebody, I don't even remember who, at some point somebody, made the following statement, and I don't know how true it is, but it seems like it could be true, that a lot of people who are on a spiritual path, over many lifetimes, may have been sort of monks or, priests or something in past lives where, hey, I took a vow of poverty, right? I took a vow of not having any personal possessions and not owning things and, that sort of thing. And still living that out, right? I'm still living, even though that may have been many lifetimes ago, I'm still living that out. I don't know how true that is. In your work, have you found that to sort of be the case, or is that just sort of a story somebody told me?
I've definitely noticed that when I've done, past life work and shifting for people, like I've definitely noticed that there's a lot of vows of poverty. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that goes in along with this is the visibility. It's really hard to really be prosperous and abundant in your life if you have visibility issues.
Yeah.
Whether it's the vow of poverty or like the witch's wound or whatever,
right.
All of those lifetimes of those massacres and all of that, I think between the two of them, they're very powerful for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we still live in this culture, where, I was commenting at one point that, we still, have witches as the bad guys in our movies, right? We still, even though that whole hysteria might have been hundreds of years ago in the Western world, where, anybody who was a little different, and particularly women were persecuted, we still live in that culture. We still are experiencing those things coming up. The Wizard of Oz with the Good Witch didn't quite do it for us completely. But, in our culture, we're still exposed to those, those images as sort of, I don't know what you want to say, like this, anybody who's sort of manifesting or changing their reality or that sort of thing, there's a tint of evil, placed around that sometimes. Mm-hmm. You find that as well?
Yeah, you're so right. It's still definitely out there. And, in some of the movies, like Maleficent comes to mind, mm-hmm. Where she, like, it turns out that it's like, they end up seeing her as just really wanting to protect her and being loving and all of that. And so it does shift some of the light on that, but there's still so many of those constructs of the villain being the sorcerer, the witch, who's, either power hungry or just trying to destroy the world.
Right. Right. And it's such an archetypal, clearly it's coming through in our mythology, like Maleficent's pop culture, but it's still a part of what I would consider our modern mythology that, thank goodness for that movie. I love the message of that, right? Because I think these things, these sorcerers, these, dark beings, I think they're archetypal. They represent parts of our culture. They represent parts of ourselves that are down in the shadow, right? Down, things that we aren't looking at. And when we work, I did an episode on shadow work. And, when we work on these things, when we bring them to light, we realize that they have good intentions for us, that they have so much power and so much light and so much good stuff to process.
Totally. Oftentimes the things that we're really trying to push away so much they're our greatest gifts. They're the pieces that once we learn how to accept them and integrate them, you're like, oh, this is here to serve me, not hinder me or hold me back.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
For sure. There's an aspect of, how should I put this, sort of prosperity or abundance or manifestation or what have you. There are these sort of two opposing viewpoints depending on who you talk to. One, for example, is that, and I get this sometime because I see clients as a shamanic practitioner, and I teach shamanism and other, teach meditation and other classes. And sometimes I get, and I understand the whole putting yourself out there thing, right? The visibility issue, because anytime you're visible, you're sort of inviting, you're inviting commentary or sorts of things for people that don't necessarily understand you, and that can be sort of threatening. But sometimes I get pushback saying, because I charge money for my services, right? And, I get pushback, spiritual teaching, spiritual healing, you should never accept anything in exchange for that. The other side of that, which clearly I'm on, is that there should be an exchange of energy, right? And in our culture and in most cultures today, money is just a symbol of energy that gets transferred for one, but that there should be some exchange. And for me, I live in a house that I have to pay for, and I have children that have to be fed, and I can't do this work if I can't take care of my needs. And so, I guess maybe that's a third aspect, is that it's just necessary to live in this culture. I don't live in a culture where, that's tribal, where a tribe is taking care of me while I'm dealing with the spiritual needs of the community, right? I don't live in that culture, so that doesn't work for me. Do you find, have you seen this dichotomy, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh, definitely. Even so much, as recently I've had backlash towards myself from, a quote unquote friend who also is in spiritual work for charging for services. Yeah. And it's kind of like, the whole energy behind it. And what I really believe is that it's, I know that I came here for a big mission. I came here to change the consciousness. And I have experienced, like so many of us, I've experienced so many trials and challenges and hardships and pain because of that, like getting me to where that I need to be now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not doing anybody any good if I'm sitting, in a cardboard box on the street because I don't have the money to provide for myself. So then if my physical needs, because we are spiritual, but we have physical bodies in this earth plane, if my needs and my security are not met, then I'm not going to be able to get to that level that I need to for myself, for my clients, or for the mission that I'm here to do. And, I really believe that, and then there's another aspect of it as well. I mean, there's definitely, going back to what you were saying at the beginning, the whole like self-worth and all of that definitely comes into play. There's a lot of stigma still in a lot of spiritual communities about charging well for the work that you do. But it's also, when I have invested high levels to work with somebody, I show up in a different way. I was giving the example to someone the other day. I had a session with someone the other day that was, what someone called fairly expensive. I showed up, I had my questions, I prepared before I was ready. And had that been a fraction of the price, I probably would have just showed up and been like, okay, I'm here. I'm just open to whatever's going to come through. So there's a whole other level of, really being able to charge in a way that's going to suit your needs, your education, you being able to continue to work and heal on yourself, getting to those elevated states without worrying about money. And, really being able to show up fully and enjoy life. I mean, we came here with a big mission and it's been challenging, but aren't we supposed to enjoy the earthly things along the way as well?
I couldn't agree more. I definitely, it's interesting because we haven't talked before this, but I didn't realize you'd received the same backlash, but it's not surprising to me either. But the story that you told is extremely interesting, right? So I do think that when people invest heavily in work that they're doing, and that means different things for different people, but yeah, there is this whole, okay, this is something that I have determined is important to me to this level, and I am going to get the most out of it. And I've done, I have done my fair share of free work for people. I have, worked as a coach and, done sort of pay me what you want kind of situations. I taught martial arts for a really long time, and I was like, just show up. And what I found, and it's exactly what you're describing, is that people just didn't show up. They just either completely no-showed or just weren't present when they were there because they weren't actually invested. They were sort of dipping their toes into whatever it was I was doing. And I do I think that people who are sort of spreading light in the world, like yourself, the work that you're doing is important, and you can find ways to touch communities. I do this podcast, and clearly people can download this for free, and I hope that it's incredibly useful and that sort of thing. But I couldn't just do this for a living. I couldn't pay my bills, and some small fraction of people who I'm also on the radio every week, right? And some very small fraction of people who listen to this podcast or hear me on the radio actually contact me for sort of deeper work. And that's completely understood. And those are the people who are meant to sort of work with me one-on-one, right? And they're sort of self-selecting. But yeah, there's this sort of, in the beginning when I first sort of hung a shingle as a shamanic practitioner, and I was very timid about asking people to pay me for a session, but I can't do it for free. I've got to pay for, right now everything's remote, but, pay for office space and pay for insurance and everything else that goes along with that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we are living in bodies, and we're meant to experience the world. We are spirits, but we have bodies for a reason. We're here to experience things. And there is nothing wrong with enjoyment. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And there's nothing, in my opinion, wrong with wanting what you want just because you want it. That's another maybe aspect of poverty mindset, where there's a lot of judgment around the things that you want. Boy, did I grow up with that. I think my parents had sort of the intention of, well, we can't afford a lot of things, because I grew up fairly not materially comfortable a lot of the time. And, my parents would sort of shame me for wanting a new toy, or, that sort of thing. Oh, you don't want that. That's a waste of, and there were always sort of excuses. And I think they were trying to not make me feel bad about us not having material means, but I think it had the opposite effect in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely the way that we're brought up, and all of the, and actually I'm starting to write a book, and that's part of what I'm going into,
mm-hmm.
all of the programming that we are brought into the society with, and how most of the time it really doesn't serve us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and it's not, not to go too far off on a tangent, it's not just about poverty mindset. And I know you and I have had at least brief conversations about this, about toxic masculinity, and this whole, I do a lot of work in the space of divine masculine, divine feminine, that sort of thing. And how, even, I consider myself a feminist because I don't think the patriarchy serves anybody. like, I don't think it's good for men or women to grow up where toxic masculinity is the norm. And I realize that's a tangent, but I'm going off on. But yeah, I mean, we're so conditioned by the culture that we live in, and we're so and our parents were conditioned, and our grandparents, and even just in this lifetime, and there's the ancestral connection as well. I mean, most people who are now living in the United States, if your parents and grandparents were born here, you come from an ancestral line that was usually escaping something, either, poverty, extreme poverty. I have relatives who came over during the Irish potato famine, for example. So people were starving to death. Or you're escaping religious persecution. So there's that whole aspect of it. Or if you're Native, if you're a Native American and your line was born here, you were, the genocide and oppression that you went through, and are still going through today. So yeah, I mean, we encounter so much of that along our ancestral lines as well. I'm sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure you work with people in their ancestral lines as well as, sort of past life work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a big piece of it. And, I think that's so much of what we are, what we're here to do is mm-hmm. to shift and to clear and to deprogram those things for us and then for future generations. That's so much of what I feel like I've spent the last 20 years doing is mm-hmm. really like deprogramming and clearing out and healing all of the societal and ancestral and past life stuff. So I could get to this point of being present and being like, okay, and now my work has felt like it's shifted where it's more like, okay, now we're focusing on building the new. Now we're focusing on bringing in the new earth and the new consciousness and shifting the paradigm on a global scale.
Yeah, I think, I think what you're speaking to is really how we all have to do our own work, right? Individually, and recognize our conditioning. First of all, right? What part of, and Vishen Lakhiani, who founded Mind Valley, he's got a book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and he dedicates a lot of time to talking about what he calls rules. And pardon my French, but that's short for bullshit rules. It's recognizing rules that that don't make any sense, that we're living out, and that have actually, like, well, why is that? Well, because we've always done it that way. Or why is that? Why can't I do this? Well, you just can't. You just can't. There's no good reason. There may have been a good reason at some point in history, or maybe even not so good reason, but we've adopted a lot of rules from our culture and we live under them, and they're, quite frankly, sometimes bullshit, right? They sometimes make no sense. And I do like the term rules. It's a little, people don't understand it. I want to talk a little bit about if you there's work that we all have to do, right? And I tell clients and people who study with me and that sort of thing, like, I am a guide, not a guru. I will never say that I'm done doing my work, right? Because if I do, I'm putting myself on a pedestal. That's just ego at that point. I'm always, for the rest of this incarnation, going to be working on myself. But because I've done that work, or I've done a lot of that work, and I know where some of my wounds are and that sort of thing, I can sort of sometimes steer people around the rocks in the stream, right? And help them along their path. And that's sort of where I am. But how do people start working on this mindset if they recognize it in themselves? And maybe recognizing it in themselves is an important first step, right? How am I showing up in the world that is, ruled by this mindset? do you think that's, I mean, it's hard. It's when you're living in your own head, like that's maybe hard to recognize. How would one begin?
Yeah, so I think that there's two very important aspects to it. First, like you definitely want to see if there are any blocks or beliefs or energies that are limiting your ability to shift your mindset and to be visible. And those can usually be cleared pretty quickly. Like I'm not a big I don't really like to spend a lot of time in the past and diving into all the details and moving into it, because from my perspective, that just gives it more energy.
Yep.
And it feeds it more. And it is like wiring all of it's wiring your brain to really put more energy into that. So it's like we clear those out in the way that you can, but then so much of it has to be like this conscious choice and this conscious like practice of checking back into yourself and saying, okay, so where am I not showing up? Why am I not showing up? What is going on? What are my beliefs around this? And how can I start to shift it? And so much of it really feels like it needs to be that conscious choice of continually coming back and coming into yourself. Because I really believe that too. Like we all have the answers inside of ourselves, and really connecting back into our hearts and into our soul and the guidance of that, and really harnessing that power to propel us forward and to move us through some of these limitations. But so much of it, so much of it has to do with just reminding yourself, like, so I'm running this program right now, and we've been talking about visibility. And it's I have to phrase it this way for a lot of the people who are in the healing professions and the spirituality and all of that. It's like, you may be the most gifted in whatever realm that you do. You may be able to see someone and instantly know this is what's going on with them. I can shift it. I can help them through this, guide them to this next place. And if nobody knows you exist, who are you helping?
Right. Yes.
And then it goes into that poverty aspect. If nobody knows that you exist and you can't feed yourself, you're going to be so stuck in your own fears and your limitations and that survival instinct that you're not going to be able to serve anybody. So by trying to be humble and not step into this, honestly, like, what was that term you used? The brule?
The brule,
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's just a block. It's just a limiting belief. It's a way of protecting yourself from being seen. So if you think that you're serving other people by not being seen or not charging what you feel would be worth your time and would give you a really good life, then it's not about them. It's about you. And why are you afraid to show up?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there. That's a lot of really good information.
Yes.
There was something you said about choice and about a continual process that sort of stuck with me, because I probably lived a lot of my life under the misapprehension that once I made a choice, that was it. Like, it was a decision point, and and I'm saying I choose that I'm going to not live in poverty consciousness. But the reality of it for me, and I think for most people, is that choice is a continuous process, right? I have to continue to choose my actions, my beliefs, my, that sort of thing, because it's not that simple. It's relatively our stuff, whatever that is, whether it's stuff living in the shadow or things that culture's forcing on us or whatever, it's multifaceted. And I think in any pursuit, and I remember talking to a family therapist one time, and I was talking to her about her marriage, and she said, I choose my husband every day, right? And that was sort of meaningful for me. Like, oh yeah, you make a conscious choice every day when you get up that I'm going to do this, and I think just doing that has this huge impact on our, whether it's a relationship or your relationship with abundance. Continually making that choice is an important aspect. Do you find that that's true? That's been true for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that comes down to anything. It's like I really like to think of it in terms of our physical, because it's so much more tangible for people to understand.
Right.
So it's like, if you are like, wake up one day and you're like, I choose that I am going to look like Jessica Biel today.
I have honestly never said that when I woke up, but I get it.
You know what I mean? Or whoever. Like, I choose that I'm going to have a 6-pack and my body is just going to be really strong and healthy and all of this. Well, that's great. That's an amazing first step, but you have to continually choose and take the actions that are going to lead you to that. And it's like, so if you're starting like a new exercise regimen or restarting or whatever, it's initially the choice is a lot more conscious, and you might have to like work a little bit harder to have that choice come back. But then it gets to the point where you've built up this muscle, no pun intended, but you've built up this mental muscle of, being able to say like, oh, well, I feel better when I choose to give my body this, so I'm going to continue to do it. And it just gets to the point where it's one of those habits that becomes easier and a little bit more unconscious. And the mindset stuff is exactly the same way. At first, it takes a little bit more effort. It takes a little bit more control. It takes a little bit more focus. But then the more that you do it, the easier that it becomes, and the more it just flows. And then the next thing you know, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, look at how far I've come. I used to be really caught up in my limiting beliefs about this thing, or these used to control my life. And now that's not even an issue for me. And, it's just continuing along the path and working through these different beliefs in that way. And,
yeah. And I think it's about, what you're talking about is building these positive habits, right? Humans are habit machines. We can build bad habits in a second. We can build not so bad habits. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because we're overcoming things that we have built as habits for so long, and we're habit making machines. When we first learned to tie our shoes, we had to think about it, right? We had to think so hard about, okay, the bunny runs around the tree and goes up to the hole. And now you just have the intention, tie my shoe, but you've done it so many times that you don't have to think. And I think you referred to this, it's moving it into that unconscious level, that level of unconscious competence. And I want to call out something else that you were talking about. And to me, that's really, really important. And I am a fan in general of law of attraction stuff, in that it has changed the mindset. The Secret and all of that law of attraction stuff has changed a lot of the mindset around spirituality and brought a lot of attention to spiritual pursuits and to self-development and that sort of thing. And I think that's fantastic. I think there's I see a missing piece out there frequently that with a lot of attraction stuff, and not to denigrate it, because I think some of the practices are absolutely beautiful, but there's this idea that if I sit on my couch and I think hard enough, a box of money is going to drop into my lap. And gosh, if that worked, would we not have all won the lottery by now? Right? Mm-hmm. Gosh, if it worked that way, I mean, that is a form of magic. I cannot imagine the amount of energy that would be required to produce a box of money dropping onto your lap. And it would be far more, far easier to earn that money and a manual, doing manual labor or something, right? There's a missing part, and that is about taking the actions that are required. And I like to refer to like inspired action, right? Really acting from the divine will, acting from spirit, doing things that are aligned and ethical and all of those things. And I think that's a missing piece. I think a lot of people, I see so many programs out there selling, this is the missing piece from The Secret, right? I've seen lots of people selling movies and books and that sort of thing. And clearly there's a market for that, because clearly a lot of people, watched The Secret or read the book, and, whatever they were practicing wasn't working to their ability. But I think the missing part is in that inspired action, the work that you need to do. It's not that those principles don't work. It's that, we are a body, a mind, and a spirit. And, you're not firing on all cylinders if you're not taking all of those layers of yourself into account. I see you nodding, so that's good that we're in agreement.
Yeah, and I think that's so much of it. It feels like mindset is just the first step, mm-hmm. like getting your mind around and focusing on what you want is really important. But then it's also feeling into it. It's taking the actions, and then the energetic aspect of it is like, I can sit there and I can think about, a box of money falling into my lap all day, or, calling in the ideal clients that I want to work with. However, if I'm not working on my own energy to align that frequency mm-hmm. to what I'm looking for, anything that I do isn't going to be it's not going to be fruitful. The mindset is definitely helpful and can help shift that a little bit. But if I have cords, or like what I like to call energetic debris, or mm-hmm. attachments, or any of that stuff, that's just like leaking my energy all right. over the place. And how am I ever going to be aligned and really be able to be that vibrational match to what I'm looking for? So Yeah, absolutely. I know we have done a lot of similar work, and one of the things it's something I work with clients a lot of cording, a lot of I think you use the term energetic debris. I mean, we just pick up stuff, right? We pick up stuff that doesn't serve us, and having that working with somebody like yourself who can help, move through that, clear it away. It's tough if you're not somebody who's been through, sort of a significant amount of training, maybe to see that in yourself where that's been happening. So, that's where you call the, I want to be like, there should be a Ghostbusters song or something, right? Who are you going to call? Call Jessica. You need a theme song. We're going to get you a theme song. I like it.
But yeah, I mean, completely, right? And so I use the term firing on all cylinders, right? And that's if people out there don't know, it's a car term, right? So you have your engine in your car has cylinders. Let's say you have 6 cylinders and 2 of them aren't working, right? Mm-hmm. How much power, how much energy, how is the ability for your car to work efficiently and get you from one place to another going to be impacted? It's going to be impacted significantly. And so I think if you think of human cylinders, right, we have all of our bodies, for lack of a better term, right? We have our physical body and our mental and our emotional body and our etheric body and our astral, like all of these things. When we get them into alignment, that's when I think the magic sort of happens, mm-hmm. right? When we've got to take care of everything. We're systems of systems. We're complex and beautiful. Beautiful in our complexity. This is completely random fact that just jumped into my head. So, human DNA is, I think it's 2 meters long. Every strand of DNA is 2 meters long if you were stretched out end to end. And if you think about how small the nucleus of a cell is where your DNA is stored, somebody said it's like packing 50 miles of kite string into a shoebox. Like, it's just kind of a miracle. And only 3% of your DNA is coding DNA, right? Meaning that it creates the proteins that build your entire body. And the other 97% some scientists have referred to as junk DNA, right? It doesn't do anything because we don't know what it does. But some really smart people, way smarter than I am, took that DNA, that quote unquote junk DNA, and ran it through linguistic analysis software, multiple algorithms, and it codes as language, as human language. It has the same statistical patterns. We don't understand it. So even on the very physical level, and you're inside your nucleus, inside your DNA, there's so much complexity there. There's so much, and that's just one part of you. I guess that's where this whole tangent is going, about how we have to address ourselves at different levels. And epigenetic research is really interesting, and it has told us what shamans from ages ago have told us, that things like trauma get passed down even on the physical level, even on genetic level. We can detect generations and generations ago. There's a study of the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, and we can detect epigenetic changes in a couple of generations. And I think they did a study with worms who have simpler DNA, and they can detect changes 23 generations. Obviously, that's hard to study with humans because that's represents a really, really long time. But with worms, they could detect epigenetic changes from things like starvation or trauma 23 generations later. So I think my whole tangent is about how we have to address these things in ourselves. I feel like we've gone way beyond poverty mindset at this point, but that's okay. It's all good. We never know where this is going to go.
Exactly. It's so true. The epigenetics just fascinates me, and it makes so much sense too. We know with our training and our work that we are energy, mm-hmm. and that is impacting everything. So it's really powerful to me. And that's, before I was well on my, my energetic training, healing journey before I had my daughter. And I'm so glad that I was. And that was one of my things, like, as I started to get older, it kind of fueled me. I was like, I need to clean up as much as I can.
Yeah.
So that I'm not passing this on to her. And, I think that I'm sure that there haven't been any studies about this, but I think that energetically, even still the work that I'm doing is still shifting her, and that aspect as well.
Yeah. So I like to say, when you heal yourself, you heal the world, right? And, the closer people are, definitely your daughter, right? Definitely when I work on myself, it has I've seen it have a positive impact on my kids. And, the nice thing, in my opinion, is that a lot of that energetic work, a lot of that spiritual work, it actually, this may be a little mind-bendy out there if you've never done past life stuff, but it actually travels in both directions on your ancestral line, meaning people who came before you are actually going to get a benefit from the work that you're doing. I know it's hard, think about your great-great-great-grandparents getting a boost from the work that you're doing. But in the formless world of spirits, time isn't really the same thing as it is in physical reality. But definitely in physical reality, when you do that work, and there's definitely maybe not on a spiritual level, but there's definitely studies out there about how parents who do their own work on a psychological basis, right? So if I am suffering from depression or something like that, how doing my own work, and that alone, just having that change in myself has a huge impact on my children. And that's always been a big driver for my own personal development and the way that I show up in the world. I know it is for you too. Like, what kind of a world do I want to leave for my kids? And, if they have kids and that sort of thing. But it starts with the changes I make in myself, because this is the most control I have over anything. It's really the only control I have over anything.
For sure.
Yeah. Particularly, I mean, gosh, we haven't even talked about this, but having kids, school age kids during the pandemic, and their, being a parent and the challenges of all of that, you recognize this is the only thing. And I'm pointing at myself. I realize you can't see that out there in podcast land. This is the only thing I have any control over whatsoever. So those are my handles, right? If you think about life as a machine with a bunch of handles, the handles I have that I can control things with really just point at myself. They're really just connected to parts of myself. And those are the things that, and maybe recognizing that as part of escaping this mindset that might not be serving us.
Yeah, definitely. And even to take it one step further, our kids are, of course, so intimately connected with us, but all of our relationships, I've talked to so many people about this where they're frustrated with a friend or their boss or their spouse. And it's like, you are the only person that you can control, so work on you, work on how you perceive things, and taking everything, and this is going off, I'm not going to get too far into this because this will be a whole other tangent. But, it's like looking at everything as like, wow, okay, I was really triggered by that, or that really brought up a lot of things for me. So instead of being upset at the external thing that is triggering you, looking at and saying, thank you so much for showing me where I still need to heal. Thank you so much for this opportunity of reflection. And, I think kids are the biggest reflector of that.
Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could. So I have twin. I mean, you know this, but I have twin daughters, and they each reflect different aspects of my personality. And when I look at some of the things they do that maybe kids do when they get into trouble or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to take responsibility for that. And their mom will tell you, they're like, you got that from your dad. And there's no fighting about that. That's I'll own it. All of the mischief and trouble, that's all me, 100%. So, I've earned it. I've earned those mirrors. I've earned that reflection. And it's, I laugh a lot. And so it's a good thing. We're coming to the end. Can you believe that? It's been, almost an hour that we've been talking, and we've been coming to the end. But I want to, this has been fantastic. It's definitely been eye-opening for me, as I'm sure it is for all of our listeners. I want to, because I don't 100% know what you're up to. I want to find out, like, on a professional level, what you're doing and what you're up to.
Awesome. Yeah. So, to be completely honest, I'm never 100% sure what I'm up to.
Okay. Something else we have in common. All right. I get it.
So, I'm so guided that sometimes it's just, and over this past year, I've had pivot, like shift after shift after shift and changes. But in all reality, yes, I do have some awesome projects that I'm working on. So my biggest focus right now is I have been assisting these heart-centered leaders who know that they're here to create big change. They're the way showers, the paradigm shifters. And I'm helping them get their voices and their work and their gifts out on a global platform through a multi-authored book.
Gotcha.
And this is the one that I'm doing right now. I have more projects that are this is why I'm saying I don't have full control over it, because I'm a very direct channel. So oftentimes it's like, okay, this is what you're doing next. And then this is next. Okay. Sometimes I feel like I'm just, even though I definitely have control and free will, it feels like with following that, I'm just kind of along for the ride sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you.
So this current project, the title is called Soul Mission: Leaders Ushering in the New Earth. And I'm designing it as a teaching platform. So each contributor is sharing a lesson, a skill, a mindset shift through either a story or a written out lesson, or a combination of both. And I'm, doing all of the energetic, the mindset support. I have someone amazing who's coming in and doing a couple of writing classes. I have all of these things in the works. And then I'm taking care of all of the back end things. So I'm, hiring very premium editing, contextual editing, high-end cover designer, doing all of that. And pulling this together and getting this book out to as many people as humanly possible. That's very good. Another one that I told you that will be in the works, and I haven't started on this one yet, but there's definitely an aspect about the toxic masculinity coming in, because that's so important. And, we could do a whole 3 hours just on this easily. But it's very courageous of men to be able to recognize that within themselves and to shift that. And then also, be a guide and standing up for others to be able to do the same thing. And there's a lot of stigma against that and a lot of pressures against that. So I'm really wanting to give, I and my guides are really wanting to give voice to that as well. That is my main focus. I do some one-on-one coaching, but it's very limited. I usually only take 2 to 3 clients at a time. I like to really dedicate a lot of my time and my energy to them. So I'm focusing on my book project. I am still taking contributors for that. If anyone is interested, you can find out all of the details on my website is jessverrill.com. So it's JESSV as in Victor, ERRILL.com. There's a whole section under there for Blue Indigo Publishing. And I have some fun other things coming down the pipeline too. I'm working on my own solo book and an immersion course that will go with that. So
very nice, very nice. So I think what that means is that you have to come back and be a guest again. Yeah. So we can find out what else is going on. And I totally agree. We could, I've written quite a bit about toxic masculinity, so we can definitely spend a whole lot of time on that topic, how important. And I think it's just amazing. I love the idea of the multi-authored book and bringing these spiritual leaders together. And so I'm excited to read it when you're done with it. And what an important task you're doing, because taking care of all of the back end part of that is, and doing the energetic support. Wow. I can't imagine how busy you must be.
I'm pretty busy.
And you're a mom. So, wow, that's, yeah.
Yeah. I am pretty busy, but that's such a limiting thing for so many people. They don't.
Oh, yeah,
they
for sure.
want to get their work out there. They want to write, but either they don't know how to self-publish, or they don't. Getting into traditional publishing contract is what, like 1% of people actually are able to do it. It's so old school that, and has so many barriers to it that I really wanted to make it as accessible to so many more people.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I completely agree. I have done the traditional publishing thing, and I have worked with a publisher, and I do work with a publisher, but it's challenging. And for me, it was, not. I mean, yes, I've written book proposals and that sort of thing, but it's, it's almost the kind of thing where I had to have a personal connection and somebody come to me kind of thing, where I wasn't sort of randomly. I can't even imagine doing that in this day and age. The whole traditional, like, mailing a manuscript off. I mean, there are publishing houses that do that, but it's, you gotta, definitely have to be prepared for a whole lot of rejection and paying for a lot of stamps to mail stuff back and to get it mailed back to you, or that sort of thing. But I think it's a fantastic thing that you're doing. As I said that, a giant crow just flew in front of my window, and crow is definitely a messenger spirit for me. This one's an old friend who I see from time to time. I try to. I think it's a her, and I don't know the difference, honestly, but I've said it's a her, and I try to feed her and her friends, so it's usually a pretty good omen. But with that, we're almost at an hour. That's crazy. The time flies. I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I will, there will be, information in the podcast notes. If you are interested in what Jessica's got going on, definitely check her out. Keep an eye out for her books. And I know I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. And so what I want to do is I will cajole Jessica to come back in the future and talk about other things, maybe as she, with respect to her busy schedule. But super nice to see you. It's been a little while, and fantastic to talk to you.
Thank you so much. One other thing that I just wanted to throw out there, if anybody is on Clubhouse, I'm doing a lot of rooms and hosting on Clubhouse, so you can follow me on there as well. And my handle is @JessFarrell. Awesome.
So if you've got Clubhouse, if you were lucky and you're in Clubhouse, find Jess there.
You have been listening to Speaking Spirit with your host, John Moore. For more info or to contact John, go to mainshaman.com. That's maineshaman.com.